Welcome to Democracy-ish. I'm Danielle Moodie.
And I'm Wajahat, and I will not be attending the inauguration of a twice impeached Bulgarian rapist, even though I live in the DMV.
I wouldn't be in DC if somebody paid me because unlike some people will be talking about later in the show, you can't put a price on integrity. But, that's me. But we kick off today's Democracy-ish with a somber note. Breaking news this morning was that Cecile Richards, former president of Planned Parenthood, has died at the young age, honestly, of 67 years old. Cecile, who I've had the pleasure of working with over a decade at our time when she was leading Planned Parenthood, I was at the Center for American Progress and doing other work for movement leaders, and extraordinary activist, extraordinary woman. Who did so much for Planned Parenthood while she was president, but also after. Truly an incredible legacy and an extraordinary loss.
It's
yeah.
I mean, I know I'm sorry for your loss, Danielle. I just saw it right before, and we mentioned it just very briefly, and I'm glad you got an image up. And what I said was just look at the timing, right? We talked about Jimmy Carter dying last week. Flags were half-mast. A man who, regardless of his presidency, what he did after his presidency, right, helped to end guinea worm. Was very loyal to his wife, decades-long loving marriage. Even when he fell. I'm sure you remember that image of him a couple of years ago. His left side of his face was half of his face completely bruised, and he was still back building houses. Went to Sunday, went to church, and a man who used his post presidency to help people. And the person who mocks and ridicules my home state, which is burning right now, is the man that we've elevated. And then you talk about Cecile Richards, Texas-born activist. Women have died in Texas and Georgia last year, seeking prenatal care in the most powerful, wealthy country on earth. And they were unable to get it because the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, punted it to the states. You have these insanely restrictive, measures, which is now, Danielle, causing an exodus of OBGYNs to leave Texas and Florida. And here is Cecile Richards, who spent her life, trying to protect women's rights, trying to protect, Planned Parenthood, right? There are folks, I want just people to realize that if you don't know about human biology or women's bodies, right? A lot of pregnancies don't go well. My wife, before we had our first, had 2 miscarriages. Thankfully, we went to the doctor, everything was fine. But a lot of women who want to become parents and moms, they have to go through abortions to save their lives. It happens. And the fact that Cecile Richards dies today as a man who takes credit for overturning Roe v. Wade, and as America, Danielle, joins, I believe it was 3 other countries in going backwards on abortion rights as the rest of the world, Danielle, goes forward.
Yeah, it's it's extraordinary. And it is a reminder of where we are today. We are going to obviously talk about the inauguration that is happening right now. And somebody just mentioned in the comments, and they said, why is it always the good ones? And it's something that I thought as soon as I heard the news. I don't know. I never know, because it seems like the bad people live forever. Evil just lives forever. And it's a reminder that we do not have a lot of time. We do not have a lot of time. So how do you want to spend your time? What is the work that you want to be doing to advance, our society, our communities? Because we don't have a lot of time. And Cecile used the limited amount of time that she had here in an extraordinary way. So today too, we acknowledge that it is Martin Luther King Day. and which is a heavy thing to hold as
Yeah.
we're getting to witness the second inauguration of a white supremacist and a misogynist and a homophobe and a transphobe and an Islamophobe. It is an extraordinary time, but you have to also recognize that we have to have the ability to hold both good and bad. That while Dr. Martin Luther King spoke about reaching the mountaintop, which we're going to play a portion of, he knew that he may not reach it, that he may not see it. And so thinking about how we remove our egos from the work it is that we do, recognizing that the seeds that we are planting, we may never see blossom, but that doesn't mean that they won't. And so with that, let's see.
Know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead, but it really doesn't matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
You know, I have seen that video so many times. And every single time that I see it, it is so powerful and such an extraordinary comfort because it reminds you what activism really is, right? Which is the belief, the hope that we will see something better, that we are the ones that are working, that are leading, that are picking up the batons, that are walking down the paths that have been created for us to get to this place called justice. And we're not all going to see it. And there are always going to be times when we backslide as we are today. But it is the consistent hopefulness, which hopefulness is not the erasure of reality. It's knowing that there are indeed going to be dark times. There are indeed going to be traumatic times, but that we have the ability, the skills, and the foresight to move forward.
You know, you mentioned those who die young. MLK was only 39 years old before he was assassinated. 39 years old. And we look at the legacy of MLK. And when people look at the legacy of MLK, and when they think of MLK, they think of a man who fought and died for justice, for equality, who did the right thing, engaged in nonviolent protest. And he is the Republicans' only, perhaps, favorite Black person. Even Republicans allegedly like MLK. That might change, Danielle, in the next couple of years, right? And so in his 39 years, look at what he accomplished. Look at what he's remembered for. And in the 79 years that Donald has, when he dies, and he will die, because the one thing that's guaranteed in life is death. It used to be death and taxes when you and I were growing up, but rich people found a way around taxes. So if you tell Gen Z the only thing that's guaranteed in life is death and taxes, Gen Z looks at you and goes like, rich people don't pay taxes, but everyone's going to die. And, you're speaking about MLK, and MLK was influenced deeply by the Southern Church, right? And he was a preacher. And this whole concept of, I might not make it to the mountaintop, but I nonetheless have faith that inshallah my people will. I might not get there, but I am hopeful that eventually we will get there, right? and I'm doing my part to, if you will, pave the ground, and plant the seeds that inshallah the future generations might be the ones who, even if I'm not around, they'll enjoy the shade and bear the fruit, right? And because it's MLK and because he was a preacher, and what you're talking about, the worst people stay alive the longest, the good people die. It reminds me of the story of Pharaoh. Pharaoh thought he'd live forever, Danielle. Like,
Mm-hmm.
the people who are oppressed by the Pharaoh, like this guy this never ends. This man doesn't die. He lives long, the torture, the oppression. When will we be free? But then things change, Danielle. That's what I always want to tell people. Nothing lasts forever. Because that
Come
same
on.
Pharaoh, according to the
Mm-hmm.
story, right, and according to Muslims also, as that sea parted, this is what Muslims believe. For those, again, it's a story. Just go with the story. At the last second, as the waves were about to crash on him, Muslims say that the Pharaoh recognized his misdeeds and that he was oppressor. And he says, oops, I'm sorry, God. But at that last second, God said, no, time's up. And the Pharaoh, just like that, was wiped out. Caesar, just like that, wiped out. Roman Empire, just like that, wiped out. The sun set on the British Empire, Danielle, right? Things fade.
Mm-hmm.
And Moses, according to the story, his dream was to get to Jerusalem. His dream, like MLK, right, was to see it. But according to the story, he didn't get there, Daniel. He didn't get there. Even Moses didn't get there. But the people eventually went there, right? So I say all this because you look at MLK, who should have lived a long, healthy life, was struck down in his
Yep.
prime. And a man where you could look at his legacy today on the day of MLK, as a rapist, a racist, a vulgarian ascends. And it could crush your spirit. And I think there should be a
Mm-hmm.
moment here where we
Mm-hmm.
acknowledge how painful this is. On
Mm-hmm.
MLK Day, it's like God is being so unsubtle. And Cecile dies, and Jimmy Carter dies, right? You can be so overwhelmed by the sheer darkness of it all. But then I think, and what I hope people take away from it, is we're still alive, we're
Yep.
still here, we still
Yep.
have a breath. I don't know how
Mm-hmm.
long I have left to live, but I got one life. And what do I choose to do with the time that I have? And so
Yep.
hope is optimism with a plan. And so,
Say that
I'm
again, Waj. Come
hope
on.
is optimism with the plan. It's not just things will happen. It's imagining a better future and then doing your part through your actions to get there. That's hope. It's proactive. And so I say, what can I do at this time? And then the last thing I'll say is, look, MLK died at 39. I'm 44, right? I've lived a longer life than MLK. We're very lucky. So here we have a breath, we have a life. I want to remind people that Donald Trump never got the majority of the votes. He got the plurality. And I believe, folks, he is going to F up. And things, they change real quick in this country. And
Mm-hmm.
Americans are fickle, Danielle. So just because it looks
Mm-hmm.
bleak now and all is lost, I'm a writer. I don't know about you, Danielle, but I haven't seen the end yet. Did you see the end right now in the book that
No,
we're
I did
writing?
not. No, I have
Oh,
not.
here we go. Now we turn the page. Sorry for my little sermon rant.
No, this is, but this is what this day should be about, which is deep reflection on how far this country has come, on who has invested their time, their legacy, their lives to furthering and advancing justice, and understanding that these moments come in waves, in sequences. Nothing is ever good all the time. That
Mm,
is a lie. That is a Hollywood movie. That is not real life. Right. And so when you think now about where we are, and we're not saying not to be upset, not to be depressed, but here's the thing, like, we grief right now and depression in this moment is a luxury.
mm,
There is work to do, whatever that work looks like for you. That can look like in the face of pure evil and hate that we are getting ready to see, right? Making sure that you are filling your cup so that you can be a center of joy, so that you can be a center of light. How are you building community? How are you holding on to your faith in this moment and bringing others along with you, right? Everyone's activism and resistance will not look the same. And I caution people from following every goddamn headline and every single thing as a way to show how woke you are. That to me is not wokeness. That is torture, right?
Mm.
And so
Masochism.
if we are to have the strength to be able to move forward, then we have to pay attention to where we are placing our energy, right? Because our energy matters. And so I am not going to give MAGA the win of me spending each and every day hard to get out of bed, depleted and depressed, exhausted, and think that somehow I'm going to have the strength to be able to move forward each and every day. You are not. So, how are you feeling yourselves? I want us to be able to reflect on that as we move through our new normal, which
Mm.
is uncertain, right? So you can't control what is going to happen around you, but you sure as hell can control your reaction to these things.
Can I before we move on,
Please.
Daniel, can I just respond to Ernie's comment below? You said, tell people who are victims of genocide that hope is an optimism with a plan. I'm glad you mentioned that. You know, having gone to Palestine 3 times, Israel and Palestine, people are occupied there, and I'm sure you all know what's happening in Gaza. And I've gone to Bosnia as well, which is still just those generations are traumatized by the war. Some of these people are the most hopeful people you'll ever meet. They have this immense faith that I don't know where it comes from. Faith in God, faith in the universe, faith that, inshallah, they say, you know, this is our test, but one day our people will be free. We will never give up the dream. We will never give up the hope. And as Danielle said, when you talk to these folks, they say, we might not make it, we might die, but my children and my grandchildren, one day we will have freedom. And I will do my part to be strong, to be brave, to stay around for my children as much as we can, and to resist, and to live a life with dignity, or try to, in such undignified conditions. So if you ever go there, and there's not, you don't have to just go to Israel, Palestine. It's even throughout America, folks. Talk to Black folks how to live your life with dignity and hope when literally when you're pulling yourself from your bootstraps. Even then, white people are so pissed off that they commit acts of terrorism and destroy your city in Tulsa, and you rebuild. So that's just what I wanted to say in response to that comment, right? It's one of those situations. And I also say this, Danielle, that having been lucky and traveled around the world, it's bad, but you haven't seen bad in America. Like, go to India, go to Pakistan sometimes, right? Go to Gaza, go to the West Bank. And so I say this not to be like, go skip outside today and smell tulips. But what they say, Danielle, as you know, when therapists and the wellness industry says this, is no matter how bad things are, take a moment, and especially do it today, folks, to be like, what can I control? What am I happy about? What am I grateful for? And at the very least, and as a person who's gone through several near-death experiences, the one thing to be very grateful for is the ability to draw breath, to inhale and exhale. And if you're still breathing, you're still alive. You still got a chance. Sorry for that little detour. I just want to respond to that comment.
No, that is, I mean, but it's not a detour. It's something that needs to be responded to, because oftentimes that is people's response. Well, what about those that are suffering the most? They still have hope. I was in Israel and Palestine, and you see people, right, waking up every day under the most oppressive conditions, finding joy, listening to music, connecting with family, furthering education. Like, these things are still happening. So let us now, with this pivot, we know what is happening, and we know that it's happening indoors because Donald Trump is a punk. I just want to remind folks, 2009, Obama's inauguration, I was at the National Mall wearing 17 layers of clothing because it was, I think, an all-time high of maybe 28 or 27 degrees that day, similar to today's temperatures. And guess what? Over 1 million people showed up on that National Mall and stood outside because That's what you do. Donald Trump, however, gonna be inside. Why? Because I believe that ain't nobody was coming to his inauguration. Much in the same way that he wanted to gaslight us and tell us, look at all these people when we were in 2017 looking out onto that National Mall. And we're like, seems like a lot of grass, a lot of space, a lot of empty bleachers. And he didn't want to see that again. But multiple people, members of Congress, have been asked, will they be attending? Will you be attending? Let us play for you the best response to that thus far.
Journalists are like, Congresswoman, are you going to the inauguration? Congresswoman, are you going to the inauguration? Are you going to the inauguration? Let me make myself clear. I don't celebrate rapists. So no, I'm not going to the inauguration tomorrow.
Seems very clear.
And
But
did
keep
you see?
asking.
Yeah, did you see Danielle yesterday on Twitter? Oh, sorry, X. Libs of TikTok, which is a truly hateful organization run by one woman that went after LGBTQ folks, and has a huge right-wing platform. They shared this clip and they said, look, AOC, calls Donald Trump a rapist. And her response was, I like, sometimes you need this petty. AOC quote retweeted it with, cry harder. And that's it. And she reposted it. And I feel like good. Like this is the type, especially with the libs of TikTok, that's the type of fighting energy. And I said, when I shared this yesterday and I saw it, I shared on Blue Sky, and I'll share it here on democracyish, that the Democrats who bring this type of energy, Danielle, who talk like this, they will be the ones who will be rewarded in the future. It just came out yesterday that Democratic Party has its lowest approval rating in decades. And this is from even Democrats, right? Meaning that Democrats, when they were those voters who associate with Democratic Party or lean towards Democrats, when they were asked, hey, what's your thought of your own party? They're like, nah. You're like, nah. And the reason for it is because they're not fighters. And I believe this is going to be a really interesting schism, Daniel, over the next 4 years. We're going to see a lot change in this country. And I think we're going to see resistance change as well. Because what I've said is those Democrats who don't bring this type of passion, this type of fight, this type of energy, who have their ear to the ground, they're going to become extinct. And a lot of the donor class, as you know, and the establishment class is older, wealthier, and white. No offense to those who are older, wealthier, and white. But oftentimes, guess what they hate, folks? I'm going to give you a little insider scoop. They hate the woke, right? And they think the Democrats have gone too woke. And even though Kamala Harris never mentioned they, them, never mentioned Latinx, never mentioned, what was it? Defund the police and bear hug Liz Cheney, even whatever, the small things that she did was too much. So this type of energy, I believe, Danielle, and I want to hear your thoughts about it, is going to be the fundamental shift of the Democratic Party. And I think is going to cleave the party. And those who move towards it, and you see Chris Murphy, white guy, kind of owning it up now, right? I feel like this will be the shift. And whoever can galvanize this kind of righteous anger, plus with policy and values, will be the front runner in 3 years.
I mean, I think that that's right. I want to hesitate to say anything about what is going to happen in 3 years, being as how we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. With regard
we might not
to
have free and fair elections again.
Yeah, with regard to free and fair elections, I think we may be witnessing the last inauguration of a president. So there's that. But I do believe that what the Democrats are missing is authenticity. I think that they're missing authenticity, and I think that they're missing passion and righteous anger. What AOC, Representative Jasmine Crockett, and others that we have seen who burst onto the scenes, but then are pushed to the back because they want to disrupt the status quo. That's why they were put in office in the first place. And I think that, you're seeing a lot of fracturing happening, right? And if you're a person that believes in astrology, a lot is happening today, this year.
Tell us.
In terms of how the stars are aligning, like you have all of the planets are changing signs for the first time in like over a decade. Tomorrow will be all of the planets in full alignment. that you're going to be able to see in the sky, right? In particular areas that are not that don't have light pollution. Like when you think that things are not like connected and there isn't like the presence of like the universe and like spirit and all of these things, there is a lot that is unfolding, and it's important to acknowledge. But the fact is, nobody wants lackluster bullshit anymore. No one like, again, shout out to Michelle Obama, who was the first one that said, yeah, no, I'm not going. How about that? What's the reason? I don't want to. Shout out to Nancy Pelosi. I think she's not attending. I don't believe that Jamie Raskin is attending. I wish that we could say there will be no Democrats on the stage tomorrow. Why? Because they're going to be in the streets with the people. They're going to be with their constituents, but that they're not participating in a farce, right? Like, signal to the people that times have changed and we need to have changed tactics. And that's why I appreciate the AOCs and the Jasmine Crockett's of the world, because they get it, right? Raskin gets it. And they move forward in that way. So we will see, because I think that the more that the people back the real Democrats, the real fighters for justice, the more that we are going to see this fracture, and hopefully there is an actual break.
Can I give you breaking news? I think this is hopeful news for anyone who's ever followed this. At the last second, President Biden commutes the sentence for Leonard Peltier. That's huge.
Say more. I don't know Leonard Peltier.
So Peltier was denied parole. Leonard Peltier was an indigenous activist who's been in jail, who was convicted of killing FBI agents. And for decades, activists have said that, he's a political prisoner. He was wrongfully detained, wrongfully convicted. And he's literally been in prison for, I think almost 50 years, right? And so his sentence was commuted. Peltier's entire struggle was connected to the indigenous rights movements. And like kind of his name has 50 years later been kind of this rallying cry. So it's kind of amazing that at the last second, he was commuted. And also, this would just happen is that Biden pardons 5 members of his family in the final minutes of his office, emphasizing he did not believe his family did anything wrong, but he feared political attacks by Donald Trump.
That is great. That is great. Biden, to his credit, has pardoned the most people in the final days of his administration, way more than any other president. And so extraordinary. All right.
But now we have great minds think alike. That was even planned, folks.
Right. Speaking of pardons. Oh, God. So speaking of pardons, this is a post from Staff Sergeant Ganell, who you all remember, I'm sure. He has a book out about his experience on January 6th. He was one of the officers who testified before the January 6th committee, so we got to hear firsthand on the ground what was happening in terms of all of the videos and pictures that we've seen. So he posts and says, the Law and Order dude is about to pardon those who assaulted the police. Collectively, more than 40 rioters attacked me that day. And here are these stark images that we all remember. On January 6, 2021, Donald Trump has said multiple times, remember, folks, he stopped playing the national anthem, right? This patriotic supposed man stopped playing the national anthem and instead replaced it with whatever fucking song that they sing. The January 6th chorus choir, whatever anti-American Confederate style song that they sing. That's what Donald Trump had replaced the national anthem with. And as we are witnessing Biden extend pardons to, I think it's now maybe quite possibly hundreds of people, this is what we have to look forward to. And again, if I am an officer, right? If I am law enforcement, what do I think about Donald Trump? Like, do you look at your fellow officers who were brutalized on that day and just think that what, they were punks? Like, how
Yes.
is it that the man that is going to pardon criminals is celebrated by some law enforcement is something so wild to me. But I really, I gotta thank Ganell and others who spoke out on behalf of their fellow officers who could not or would not to offer that perspective on that day. And just to remind you, while Donald Trump wants to control the image and the narrative of today, this
There
is
you
what
go.
people should be holding in their minds. Even though his inauguration is going to be moved indoors because he's a punk, it is more so because he didn't know who is going to be on that mall, if anyone, and didn't want to be embarrassed. But this is what you should remember about the Capitol building, about January 6th, as Donald Trump's inauguration is underway.
And about the pardons, I'm fine with Joe Biden pardoning Hunter Biden and his family, because if there was any other Republican other than Donald Trump, he would have never done that. It's only because Donald Trump promised retribution, right? Because he called us scum, because he quoted Hitler, folks. People forget because nothing matters anymore. But in the final month before the election, he said that his enemies were the, quote, enemy from within, that he would unleash the National Guard and military upon. No other U.S. president in the history has ever threatened to release the National Guard and military upon their own, quote unquote, enemies from within. And, we're also, to quote Hitler, we're also apparently vermin poisoning the blood. He imagined violence against Liz Cheney and openly said he wanted televised military tribunals. So you hear that as a president and you're like, I'm 82 years old. We probably won't have free and fair elections ever again. And this man, his whole life has been committed to the petty. Even remember, Danielle, he was a changed man. He was serene. He had that diaper on his ear after surviving an assassination. And then he gave a speech at the RNC and everyone said, it'll be a changed Trump. And he lasted like 30 minutes. And then he went on a 9,000 word improv tirade where he mocked. This is the man who just survived an assassination. He mocked Paul Pelosi. He did the hammer. So if I'm Joe Biden and if, I have a family, Danielle, and I see this violent mother effort coming in, I would have done the same. And also, we're very critical of Biden, but we try to be fair. +1 on all the pardons, commuting the sentences, and also for Leonard Peltier. I think that's huge. A Democrat in the past should have done it. And I think Biden probably is at that stage like, I don't got much time to live. What do I care? Like, I'm going to just do this as I leave. At the same time, though, let me give a quick critique as we pivot to a point I want to make about those who are bending the knee. Biden is a servant to decorum and civility. Even now, Danielle, despite everything I just said, Joe Biden and his wife are going to, they rode in the caravan with Donald Trump to the Capitol. Now, the question I have for you, Danielle, is
sickening.
If you are simultaneously telling me that this man is a semi-fascist, that, as Kamala called him, a fascist, that he was impeached, rightfully so, for inciting a violent insurrection, that he's a threat to our democracy, that you play videos and photos that you just saw of the violence on January 6th, where his followers, incited by him, smeared shit in the Capitol and attacked Capitol Hill police officers, where to this day, 5 years later, he's the only president to ever lie about an election that he lost and still maintains that he won an election that he lost. And then you say, well, Donnie boy, come on over to the White House. Let's shake hands. Here's the world's biggest cackling fire behind us. Let's have some hot cocoa and marshmallows. And you know what? For the sake of civility and decorum, because this is the way things are done, let me just ride with you to the Capitol. The same place where 5 years ago, your followers tried to attack and kill Republicans and Democrats for the sake of civility. Your response?
Let me just say this with a full chest. Fuck your civility, because it has gotten us absolutely nowhere. And if there is any time to be uncivil, to be real and honest about where we are, it is now. Because you think that what? The image of you riding in Donald Trump's caravan shows the American people that we are what? Quote unquote, coming together. That is bullshit. It is a lie. We know that Donald Trump is only going to be president to 30% of the population that voted for him. And he's going to screw over the 70% that did not. We know that there is absolutely no such thing as bipartisanship moving forward. We know that there is no such thing as democracy moving forward as Donald Trump creates Bitcoins and different ways to grift off of the American people. So you know what? Joe Biden, he is going off into the sunset. He will be sunsetting soon as a man that is 82 years old and wildly frail, or 81 and extraordinarily frail. But I refuse to be civil with the uncivilized. I refuse to provide like any type of applause or sense of normalcy to people who defecate on our democracy. So no thanks, Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden. You would have done and served the American people a lot more if you had told them the truth. So he sits down, his last presentation to the American people, warning us of the dark days ahead and to stay vigilant, and then rides in a fucking parade with the fascists. Miss me. I cannot.
Yeah. And Caroline, a good point. Don't worry, we're on top of TikTok. Let's talk about it right now. Let's TikTok about it right now. That's a dad joke. But that's why I drive a Honda Odyssey minivan and they pay me the big money. That was top of the dome. That was kids. That's called
top of the dome. That's called riffing. So
Danielle, don't you at least give Donald credit for saving TikTok? Danielle, be fair. Don't be a hater. Can't you at least get him credit? Because TikTok went dark and my kids were like, Baba, what happened to TikTok? And I said, don't you worry, Danielle. Donald is coming back to power. He'll save it. Come on, Danielle.
Yeah. The man who actually signed the deal to ban TikTok in the first place. So what did I say last week? This is what billionaires do. They create the problem and then sell you the solution. Donald Trump created the problem around TikTok, but folks won't remember that because America has the memory of a gnat. And then now turns around and says to the president of TikTok, go dark for a day, actually go dark longer than that, so that when it comes back on, that he will be seen as the savior. So for folks, when TikTok did go dark for a day, this is what you saw on your screen. A law banning TikTok has been enacted in the US. Unfortunately, that means you can't use TikTok for now. We are fortunate that President Trump has indicated that he will work with us on a solution. Let me just tell you something, a little bit of info. The TikTok ban was never going to have TikTok go dark. What was actually going to happen is that you weren't going to be able to get updates for TikTok moving forward, but that you were still going to be able to utilize the platform. That I know for a fact. And so this right here was a fucking stunt by one of the biggest stunt queens, Donald Trump. And TikTok went along with the get along because they're trying to what? Cover their own asses. So if we kiss up to Donald Trump and we say what it is and do what it is that he wants, then guess what? The kind king will show us good favor. And that is what everyone is lining up to do. And so you have Chris Murphy, as Waj mentioned earlier, who is starting to pop off and said, for real, oligarchy, the richest handful of citizens running the country for their personal enrichment to survive, the billionaire ruling class needs what, folks? State-controlled media. Here's the first no apologies play. Trump wants to use government money to give him control of TikTok. What does Donald Trump put out? I'm asking companies not to let TikTok stay dark. I will issue an executive order on Monday to extend the period of time before the law's prohibition takes effect. You know, what he signed back in 2020. So that we can make a deal to protect our national security. The order will also confirm that there will be no liability Let me see for this. Let's go to the next
That's
slide.
right.
Oh, so there will be no liability for any company that helped keep TikTok from going dark. Oh, because this is what Donald Trump says. Americans deserve to see our exciting inauguration on Monday, as well as other events and conversations. I would like the United States to have a 50% ownership position in a joint venture. By doing this, we save TikTok, keep it in good hands, because Donald Trump owning TikTok is TikTok being in good hands. We save TikTok. Without US approval, there is no TikTok. With our approval, it is worth hundreds of billions of dollars, maybe
Hundreds of
trillions, or
billions,
maybe
trillions.
quadrillions.
Yeah. So, pardon me. While you were reading that, I posted a comment, and I didn't know I blocked you off. But that comment was good by Richard, one of our commentators. It brings it to a point that I want to mention that authoritarians and Nazis used to create problems, then come in and say, "Look, it's their fault," and then come in and try to fix the problem that they created. It's like an arsonist saying, "Hey, guys, come on, who put this? Who put this house on fire?"
While they're
Jeez,
holding the
guys.
matches.
Yeah, come on, immigrants, stop burning the house. Oh, look, who's got the bucket of water? Me. So Donald Trump created it, and this is the best thing about facts and evidence for the rest of us is that there is an amazing clip of Donald Trump, several videos of him publicly, openly talking
Yeah.
about his animosity towards TikTok, talking about banning TikTok, right? And then what happened, because we still had a democracy as of, I don't know, maybe today, yesterday, Congress passed the law. President Biden signed it. Supreme Court upheld it. So now he says executive order. It doesn't work that way. You have a balance, checks and balances. Well, what about the law? What about the Supreme Court, right? And he just goes, it's executive order. So maybe we'll just kind of ignore the three branches of government, sure. And TikTok, and I'm glad you mentioned this, TikTok, folks, did not have to go dark. That was a stunt. I want to repeat what Danielle said. TikTok going dark was a stunt. There was no need for it to go dark. The only reason it went dark and then went back on a couple hours later, coinciding with Donald Trump's post, is to give Donald Trump credit for saving TikTok that he wanted to destroy in the first place. And the billionaire owner of TikTok has joined the dais. Dais. How do you pronounce it?
Deus?
Deus.
I don't know.
Along with other billionaires, the working class, such as billionaire Sam Altman, the CEO of AI, billionaire Mark Zuckerberg, the head of Facebook, billionaire Elon Musk, the richest man on earth, billionaire Jeff Bezos, billionaire CEO of Alphabet, the working class, the common man from the Rust Belt. Well, they created a space for him as well. So it goes back to that Ann Telneus Washington Post cartoon that we shared last week or a week and a half ago, where if you all remember and you watch our show, she is was the Washington Post editorial cartoonist since like 2010, and it was the first time ever in her career that she says that a weekly cartoon that she offers up was censored and killed. And the cartoon in question was all these men that I just mentioned bending the knee, giving the giant orange calf of Donald Trump literal bags of money.
That's America. That is America. And speaking about big bags of money.
Go ahead. There's in sync.
Speaking of big bags of money. So Snoop Dogg, which apparently by folks on the interwebs has been renamed Lapdog, is receiving backlash for performing at the inaugural crypto ball, which you might as well just have called the Grifters Gala, last night ahead of Trump's inauguration, because apparently he never met a bag of money that he didn't like. And the backlash that he is receiving is a lot because, one, he is uber wealthy, but people have always known that Snoop is a absolute opportunist.
Boom.
And you saw it during the Olympics, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, look at Snoop, Uncle Snoop, blah blah." And people now are just like, "I want to take back every single good thing that I said about him," because evidently, and this is something, and I'm saying it, but I really need to find the post or the interview or whatever, is that before he was killed, Tupac had said on multiple occasions
There you go.
that Snoop Dogg is not who you think that he is, and is in many ways a sellout. And people were like, no, 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 that's not true. Now, here we come, you know, decades later, and you're watching this and you're seeing him, Rick Ross,
Nelly.
Nelly, and other hip hop artists, and the like Ice Cube, like who these are the 15% of Black men who have abandoned morals for money, who think that their proximity to whiteness will somehow save them, who are the epitome of people who want to remain unfree, because for them their freedom is wrapped around white supremacy and access to money. They have both of those things and they think that they will be good, right? I'm just looking out for me, and it's disgusting and it's disappointing, but there we are. There will always be those people. And I remember, and I posted this on Blue Sky a couple of days ago. I said, you know, when I was learning about Harriet Tubman when I was young, elementary school, and I just could not understand when the teachers would tell us that, like, there were people that Harriet would go back for and they wouldn't leave, right? Like that, you know, that they didn't want to get free, or that there were those people that would, you know, in light of staying in alignment with massa, you know, tell on other enslaved Africans that were trying to get free. And this is, you know, this is that in modern times. It's just like, now you get it. Like, oh, because your safety is of more importance to you than the collective. So you're willing to sell out and do whatever, right, in order to have this imaginary idea of safety. And this is that.
Snoop Dogg has become Steven from Django Unchained. If you know, you know.
You know.
And what makes it egregious, folks, with Snoop Dogg in particular, is, you know, it had some harsh language, so we don't have the videos, but just go check right now as we're watching. Just Google Snoop Dogg and Trump on X or other places. Look at the videos from 2016, 2017, the appearances he's had on black radio shows where people ask him about blacks for Trump. He calls them Uncle Tom's house. He is admonishing them, criticizing them. He is talking down to them. He says, how could you? And then what happened? Pay for play. Donald Trump pardons Death Row, former president of Death Row, his friend, Snoop Dogg's friend. And then all of a sudden, Snoop Dogg, as of I think last year, said, well, Donald Trump's good for me. And voila, just like that, that same Snoop Dogg for about 8-9 years, who was admonishing other black men and women for voting for Trump, is now, just look at him on the right, in front of a crowd that promoted a neo-Nazi conspiracy that they knew was false, of Haitians eating animals and pets and cats, in front of a crowd that says people who look like you and me and Snoop Dogg come from shithole countries.
Yep.
For a man who to this day refuses to apologize for the exonerated 5 black and brown teenagers who were exonerated of raping a woman, and Donald Trump to this day, because he's so petty, to this day, he refuses to say that they're innocent. He took out money asking for the death penalty in the 80s against these teenagers. A man who, him and his father, were sued by the DOJ for racism towards black tenants, right? This is who he's performing for. This. Yep. So we're all going to die, folks. We're all going to die. Some of us will die with wealth. Some of us that die with poor. But you can control whether or not you sell your integrity and your morality and your ethics and your soul. You can die a rich, poor man, or you can die a poor, rich man like Snoop Dogg. Hopefully he changes. And speaking of, I want to be equal opportunity. It's just not in the black community. South Asian children, don't let South Asian children grow up to be Vivek. Oh, Vivek. Oh, Vivek. Look what they make you give, to quote the Born Identity. Look at what they make you give. You sat there and you smiled with your white teeth and you parroted all their talking points. and you were harsher than them when it came to immigration, and you supported Donald Trump, and you sat there and took it as Ann Coulter to your face said, she'll never vote for you because you're an Indian, and you smiled and you said, but I respect you. And then when you dropped off out of the presidential race, you let the Babylon Bee sit there and depict you as a 7-Eleven worker, and you said there, that's hilarious, and you're like, okay, I'll get something. And then Donald Trump threw you a bone, and then Doge, the government efficiency regulatory committee aspect of the government, nonprofit, no one knows that you were co-heading with Elon Musk. You were going to make government good again and make it efficient and cut government spending, and you had a role. And lo and behold, Danielle, right before Trump was inaugurated, what happened to poor Vivek?
Oh, here we
Hi,
go.
Vivek.
Boom, boom, boom. So, as it turns out, I'll read this. Vivek Ramaswamy, who Trump chose to co-lead Doge with Elon Musk, is expected to soon step away from the task force that, by the way, hasn't started yet because he's being inaugurated right now. There has been friction between rank and file Doge staff and Vivek Ramaswamy. And Ramaswamy has been subtly encouraged to not let the door hit him on the way
Can
out.
you pause for a second?
Mm-hmm.
Rank and file Doge staff. What staff?
Elon
Who
Musk.
funds it? Where is it? It's
what
Elon
building
Musk.
is it located in?
Yeah.
Unclear. So he's been subtly encouraged to exit. He intends to announce a campaign for Ohio governor as soon as the end of January. So before he even got the job, he is out of a job. And by the way, in all honesty, you tell me if I'm wrong. Was he the only person of color that was quote unquote appointed inside of the Trump administration? Is there somebody else?
There's one black.
Who?
There's one black member Trump. I'll find out right now.
Okay.
But
okay.
As we do that, can you mention speaking of black lapdogs for Trump, brown lapdogs for Trump, can we talk about a man who just discovered his daddy?
Oh my God. Byron?
Yeah.
Okay. So, but I didn't put it in a slide. I didn't put it in a slide.
Oh, you didn't put it in the slide.
I didn't put it in a slide. See, you have to tell them. You have to tell them because you know how folks, there's this really sick, nothing else that I can call it, but a fetish that has been going around with these MAGA men and referring to Trump as daddy, and saying that daddy is home, and it is very weird.
I got it. Wait. I got it. Among the first 100 people of Trump's cabinet so far, I was right. Only one black person has been named, former NFL player and head of the White House Opportunity and Revitalization Council, Scott Turner. Now, check this out. I wish I could show you this graphic. I'm sorry. They've broken down in charts the first 100 members on percentage, right? 87% white, Hispanic Latino 5%, Asian Pacific Islander 7%, black 1%, 100. So all the people like Tim Scott and others, not them, but continue, Danielle. I had to just say that.
I mean, it speaks volumes. And so again, just going back to Snoop Dogg and the rest, going back to Vivek, you choose, right, the proximity to these white supremacists as like your meal ticket, your power ticket, and you are always the first to go, and you just don't get it through like your thick heads.
You know, the thing with Byron Donalds, right? Is Brian Donalds or I'm having
Byron Donalds.
Yeah,
I always say McDonald's, but sure.
The thing with Byron Donalds is, I mean, just sit back, folks, and just take a second. You're a black man referring to another white man as daddy. He has a daddy. He ain't your daddy. He has mocked you and ridiculed you. You did everything. You performed. You tap danced. He still didn't give you a cabinet position.
Still didn't choose you.
Tim Scott married a real life woman. a real woman person.
No,
And
he engaged. He
oh,
proposed. He didn't marry her because he
he
didn't
didn't
get
marry
the
her? Okay.
job, Waj.
So yeah, he even like hugged her and like held her hand, and even then he didn't get it. Of the 100 people so far, it might change. 1% is black. That's represented by one person, not Byron Donalds. And you go on television and you say, "Daddy's back." And real quick, we talked about this last Friday. This toxic patriarchy. You thought we were kidding? We weren't. We were on top of it. Remember we talked about it last Friday? Tucker Carlson said, "Daddy's coming back. He's giving an
Yes,
America spanking."
that's what I
And
said.
Charlie Kirk is like, "Daddy's back." Folks, this is weird as F. The fact that grown men are talking about Donald Trump as their daddy and looking forward to him spanking America, like this, can we just sit there for a second before we close out and say how weird this is? This is a cult. They have given up their soul, their ethics, their values, their integrity, their self-respect for Donald Trump, a man who respects nothing. So there's a choice to be made, folks. Like I said before, there are a lot of poor rich men and a lot of rich poor men. Very few things that people could take away from you. This world, this life can take away a lot. Poverty can crush you. There can be pain, death. You could lose loved ones, right? It could whittle you down. But then there's choices to be made whether or not you walk out with your head held up high and you maintain whatever shred of dignity there is, Danielle, right? Hope, love, faith. And that's how you choose to live your life, no matter how the crappy the cards were that were dealt to you. And these are privileged men who voluntarily traded away the one thing that once you sell, it's very hard to get back: your dignity, your self-respect, for Donald Trump. And so I say, for the rest of us, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm a poor writer who drives a Honda Odyssey minivan, but I will always, inshallah, have my self-respect. I will never bend the knee to a tyrant or a king. I will try my best to always speak the truth. And we here at Democracy-ish will try our best for however long this lasts, 4 years, 8 years, 12 years, to do our best to guide this country towards a better horizon, a better goal. Because even though we might not get there, Danielle, as I've said this before, and I'll say it again, I got kids, and I have to make sure that my kids, at the very least, have a model of a father who didn't sell himself out like Vivek, who bent the knee, who called another grown man his daddy, who didn't trade dignity and kindness and decency for short-term bag of money. And that, inshallah, maybe we plant the seeds, and if you and me don't get to see it, our kids can experience the shade and taste the fruit and get there with the rest of our with the rest of their friends. So this is why we do the show, folks. We thank you all for listening. We're going to be here twice a week.
Yes.
It's not going to be the latest, like, and as Danielle said real quick as we leave, and Danielle, of course, the last word is, we're not going to do the like, oh, he did this, he did that, he did this, he did that.
No.
We'll comment on it, but we'll also, inshallah, try our best to pave a better way forward, highlight people doing good work, and also, believe it or not, as Danielle said, it's important. They're going to come after us, and the tactic of fascists is to exhaust you. The tactic of racism is to exhaust and distract you. So we're going to make sure that you're not exhausted, you're not distracted, that we find moments of joy, of levity, of community, and inshallah, we try our best to get through this. And again, if we don't make it, that's okay. If we can just push the ball forward, and inshallah, our children's generation can take it the rest of the way to the end zone. Sorry for my last sermon of the day.
I love this so much. I want to thank every single one of you for showing up. We appreciate you. We appreciate all of the donations. Again, this is independent media, so every dollar that you have given us goes a very long way in allowing us to continue creating the content that you all deserve. And particularly now, as we move into what we don't know for certain, we will be with you 100% of the way. And yes, I will be back here at 5 p.m. Eastern for the Danielle Moodie Show. So please do tune back in then. We appreciate each and every single one of you. Thank you to our moderators. There were some trolls
Cindy.
in there
Thanks.
today.
First time watcher.
Oh, hello, Cindy. Thank you so much. We hope that you will be back with us. Thank you for listening to Democracy-ish. I'm Danielle Moodie.
And I'm Wajahat.
And we will be back, Lord help us, on Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern. We appreciate you. Inshallah. See you then. Take good care of yourselves.